Hey everyone, this is Danny right here and welcome to another devlog for our indie game Kingsblood. And if you're interested how we created the character you just saw in the beginning, starting from zero to the final product, then just stand by and watch the remaining. The spreadsheet you see right here is an overview over all our class and race combinations and basically gives the current status where we stand with our characters. As you might see, we don't have a Halfling Mage yet, so let's go and create a Halfling Mage. As all three of us work full time, I at least try to make the best out of my time and use my long commute to write stuff down. Pretty empty during this pandemic, isn't it? Anyways, what I did right here was writing down a little story and sending it to myself, so I could later import it into the game. Also makes the time traveling fly by pretty fast, and as we design an RPG with tons of texts which need to be written down. I had the idea for this character for quite a long time. He's basically a totally crazy riddle master, living in exile and only being unlockable if you can crack all of his riddles. If you want, you can read his story on our website. You can find there all of our other characters' background stories, at least those which we have published yet. Not polished and probably some writing errors, but at least all of this gives some transparency about what we are doing. When I arrived home in the evening, I copied the story I wrote into one of our character JSON files. This file is meant to store all the relevant information about the character. I also added a text describing his ultimate ability, his traits, in this case being a dazzler, creative and cautious, his synergies being Halfling and Mage, as well as some other stats and traits, for instance his age and origin. As you will see later on, the file is also used to define all the character specific animations as well as graphic effects like auras or projectiles. For the model, I copied one of our existing characters, in this case the Halfling cook Bodo, and exchanged his body parts by more fitting and mage-like body parts. I gave him a cape and later on even a crown, as he thinks of himself to be the master of all secrets. For this we have a customizable body part set, which we altered in a way that it is also usable for Halflings or dwarves who have different proportions. In the case of Halflings, the legs have been shrinked and the feet, head and hands have been increased in size. Since Pori is supposed to fire lightning strikes and Hans has an affinity towards storm and thunder, I colored him in light blue. For every character we create custom-made portraits. Now, usually what I do is I send a rough description about what I want to our artist. So what she does, she usually creates a preliminary sketch, and in this case, as you can see, even though I was quite happy about this one, I told our artist she should make him even more crazy. And I think she really delivered with the end result. And here you go, here he is, Pori, our batshit crazy Halfling Mage. As all of our characters, I just think he looks incredibly cool. Now, the next step usually is to just import the file into Unity, and which you see right here. And what I do next is I just rename the file so it will be recognized by our program code. And in the next step, I'm just converting the file into a sprite. And with that, we are ready for our first test in game. So let's just jump there and open our home base. And here we can see him already in small. Let's click on him and you will see him in big, and everything gets loaded, his image, his traits, his story. So far everything is looking good. One thing we have to solve is that with the very small character images we have some resolution problems, some pixelation, but I already have a plan how to solve that, so that will be part of another devlog. Before we can see the 3D model in action, we now have to animate it. For animations we use the add-on uMotion within Unity. Since we have already created tons of animations, I'm just importing an old one and fixed the issues which look out of place. In this case his arm, which does not go straight during attack, as well as the placement of his mage staff. Another thing we do is that we set up events. For instance, the exact moment a projectile leaves his staff, or the flaring up of an aura while he casts a spell. So here you can see the effect I want to flare up when he's doing his special attack, so his chain lightning, which we will design later on, and which I want to fire around his own model while he's channeling the chain lightning, which we will design later on in this video. So once again, it is time for another test. We select a city, go for a quest, and send Pori onto a quest and see how all the animations work out in combat. So as you can see, I have a bit of a trouble finding Pori, as I'm pretty sure about that. We'll have to exchange the font. It is kind of hard to read, and you can already see on the world map that his walking animation is looking quite nicely. But now let's see how everything looks in combat. His idle animation also looks good. What about the attack animation? There is a little bit of a problem since it does not transition too well into his idle animation, and so far we're still loading the wrong projectile as well as the wrong aura. So this has to be exchanged within the character JSON file, which you've seen before. So let's go there and exchange all the animation and the graphic effects. And once again, we are back in the JSON file, and you see here now he gets his Pori aura and he gets the Mage projectile, as Mage is also shooting a lightning projectile. Now there was one more thing I didn't like, because at the moment Pori was shooting out his projectile not from the center of his staff, from the top of his staff, but from his hand. So what we usually do, we set a spawn point for the projectiles, and you see right here I dragged it right to the top of the staff. So now we for once changed the projectile and we relocated the projectile spawn position so that later on in combat the lightning will come out of the top of the staff. Alright, and here we go for the next test and see if the basic animations work. So what do we have right here? Alright, the projectile is actually coming out of the top of the staff, and here you see that also during the special attack, you can see the special attack filling up when the mana bar is full. He is also doing the Pori aura as he's supposed to do. Now finally we are designing the special attack. What you see right here is the special attack factory, where we have to register every special attack. But much more important is creating the actual special attack. And this is pretty unique for every of our characters, because most of our characters have a really individual special attack. So what Pori is supposed to get is a chain lightning, which bounces a defined number of times between different enemies, and we actually save this value within a constant right at the start of the script. And the special attack itself gets triggered when we fire the event within the animation send projectile. Now the first thing which happens is that a projectile is fired from our combatant, our player character, to the first enemy. Then we are looking if there are any other enemies in the range of the first enemy. If there are any enemies within the range, then we recursively fire our function send next projectile, which fires a projectile from the current enemy we just targeted to the next enemy in range, which is chosen randomly. Each time we do that, we reduce the bounce count. So as long as we have enemies left which have not been hit before, this is an information which we store in a list, or as long as the bounce count is bigger than 0, the method send next projectile is fired over and over again. So the moment a projectile hits an enemy, damage is applied, and pretty much that's it. Now what we are still missing are some sound effects which I recorded in Audacity and then added to the event system of the animation, as well as implemented some on-hit sounds within the script. And now let's take a look at what we've created with all the sound effects activated. well, here you go, that's how the end result looks. I'm quite pleased with how everything turned out, the chain lightning, the portrait, pretty much everything about Pori is to my liking, I have to say. But for me, even better than seeing the end result feels the moment when I can go to our character table and finally cross another character from our list. And if you enjoyed that content, then don't hesitate and subscribe to this video, and see you next week.